It's Andrew Downs. I'm proud to support Three Beards Media, and I would love to work with you. If you need merchandise for your company, organization, band, softball team, whatever, I can help. From name brand apparel to promotional items, large orders or small, online stores, and more, I can help your brand stand out. AKC Marketing is local, based in Johnston, and we are an employee-owned business, so our costs are low and our turnaround times are fast. But most importantly, we give you personal service to make sure you get exactly what you're looking for. Email me at andrew@akcmarketing.com or find me on social media, and let's make some cool stuff together. Now sit back and enjoy this Three Beards Media podcast.
This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Old Man Strength. I am your host, Chris Shipley, with my co-host, Aaron Wall, broadcasting live from the Andrew Downs AKC Marketing Studios, and sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company, Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage, and Greenberry Realty. Aaron, how are you doing on this fine 4-0 Cyclone Sunday?
Oh, I'm well. My folks had been in town last week. They just left to fly home. Today I dropped them off at SeaTac so they could fly back to Kansas City. And it was funny. I got relayed this story, and this is a very old man strength story that I'm going to tell you. I got relayed this when I got home. My wife told me this. She said, I was standing next to your dad as we were saying goodbye, and he was petting the dog, one of our dogs named Blue. And he's scratching the dog's head, and Blue is 12 years old. So he's old for a larger dog. He's a 70-pound dog. My dad is 82, or at least will be next month. And he's scratching this dog's head, and he says, "Well, Blue, it was good to see you. I probably won't see you again because one of us will probably be dead." And it's like, my wife's like, "I hate it when your dad says stuff like that." I'm like, it's because he has old man strength. He's lived a good life, and he's like, if it's time, it's time, and he's not worried about it, and he's not afraid, and but he says stuff like that, and it freaks my wife out. It's funny. My parents, the first thing they wanted to do when they got here was talk about, if we die, the cremations are already paid for, and this, and if we have to go into a nursing home, we're going to go here, and all that stuff you need to talk about. But my wife's losing her mind. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah, that's what I've been doing the last week. What have you been doing?
I have been working on a really fun project at work. So we are submitting nominations for for some awards for some of our communities and things like that. And we have to submit video submissions. And I've totally ripped off the theme from MTV Cribs, and it might be the greatest thing I've ever done. So we're framing these videos as an MTV Cribs kind of a thing. So once they're all done and I get permission, maybe I'll toss them out on some social medias. But it's been pretty fun. It's got my little creative juices flowing. So it's been a fun week at work. So
yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of awards, we had 3 podcasts nominated for the Iowa Podcast Awards, and 3 were finalists. Is that what you'd call it?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. So,
and you didn't invite me.
There was enough social media posts that you knew. You
could have invited me to come to the
flying out here.
Maybe we would have won had the looks of the company been invited.
Maybe. That's right. Instead, I just brought me and my beautiful wife.
Delegates, and you didn't even give me a chance.
I'm sorry. You're right. You could have swayed the vote. I'm sure.
Fired.
No, we for those of you that haven't heard, we've announced it on the other pods, but for best interview podcast affiliated, Old Man Strength was one of the 5 finalists for the award for Iowa Podcast Awards. False Starts was one of the 5 finalists for best wellness podcast, and Three Blind Refs was one of the 5 finalists for best sports podcast. We unfortunately didn't win any of those awards, but there were over hundreds of submissions for us to make the top 5 and to be able to be judged nationally by the group of panelists that they had. I'm pretty stoked about that. Not too bad for a company that we've had just for 2 years. And then Three Blind Refs, all of the podcasts, regardless whether or not you made finalists or not, were loaded up for the Iowa People's Choice Award. And Three Blind Refs got the 4th most votes for the People's Choice Awards. So it's pretty impressive.
Well, awesome. Well, let's bring on our guest who I believe also talks for a living.
He does. So super excited to bring on fresh from his trip from Spain. He's currently on 1110 KFAB in Omaha and now has the morning slot at WHO Radio as well, and used to be on KXNO, and has his own podcast, I believe, which is called Emery Plus One. Emery Songer, thanks for joining Old Man Strength. Appreciate it today.
Thanks, fellas. Awesome to be here. Wow, what a crazy story with the old dog and your dad. I don't know if I have the insides in me right now to deal with that conversation, but no, it's Old Man Strength. I mean, you could define that in so many different ways. It's really cool that you kind of have this outlet that kind of embodies that. So I love having like a little Old Man Strength thing every single day for my life. I'm going to diary that a little bit. I think that's cool.
Well, we feel like it's not really an age number. In reality, this podcast started with me and our former partner, Tim, where we were just going to come on and talk about our old dads. And then after we ran out of material for that, we thought, let's bring other people on and let's learn about their old dads. So, and then life lessons, and then it's just kind of evolved. So, but that's just kind of the gist of it is just learning about people's strengths and triumphs and life and funny stories and things like that. So
yeah, that's it was one of those things. I think we all see life just differently enough. I mean, we're very similar. I think people forget how similar we all actually are to each other, but we see life differently enough through our own personal lens that I think we miss out when we don't listen to each other in the way that we're seeing it. And that's one of the great things. I'm happy that you guys are able to do this, not just with this, but with all the different shows that you guys have at Three Beards Media. It's really cool to see what you get done with that, by the way. I think the more outlets we have, you go back and read George Washington and Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, all these people in their diaries and stuff, man, they'd be podcasting in 2024. This is kind of like the new way that we kind of document our lives and try to understand the world around us. So I'm super happy that I actually get to be asked questions this time around, because that's usually not how things go.
Well, we appreciate that. I got a little nervous. You mentioned Hamilton. I thought we were going to talk about that terrible musical.
Oh, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. I mean,
I just want to get Aaron all riled up.
I am neutral on it. I'm not going to defend your opinion or lack thereof. Hamilton.
I know we're here to talk about a lot of stuff, and I don't want to step on what you have.
There's no agenda here, Emery. It goes wherever it goes.
How do you arrive at that opinion?
Because
is it just it's like natural cynicism to the entire world telling you something's good, so you just have to go against it? Is that what that is?
Sometimes that's what my life is, yes. But in my
how do you think I became a White Sox fan? Actually, that. Now that I say that out loud, it's just kind of actually that's me.
Because I was not aware when I sat down to watch it that the entire thing was saying through the entire thing, and within 5 minutes I was like, "This sucks."
Yeah, so that's a caveat is if you're not super into quick, it's incredibly well written, and the lyrics of the songs are actually really incredible. objectively. But if you aren't generally like a hip hop music fan, nor are you really fast, like interested in fast spoken word, generally I am not. I think I'm a sucker for the history part of it. They got a lot of the history right in there. So I think that's what pulls me in. I think Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote the whole thing, I think he's a genius. So that I think also kind of puts me in that regard. But it is like 98% music in a different way than you're used to. And I think the novelty of that created the hubbub that surrounds it. But I think it's well deserved. You know, it's not the greatest musical of all time, but I love Hamilton. I think it's actually great.
I mean, you look at Chris and immediately think that guy loves hip hop.
Yeah. I do.
I think
I
think we all kind of fall into that. I can't do it very well. I'll be honest. There's a few like cool tracks. I'm more of a classic rock. You know, get me. You know, I like real drums, real guitars. I'm very passionate about music. A lot of the stuff that I hear today, I'm just kind of like, you know, like, man, I cannot believe this is what's popular now. But I'm sure every generation's kind of had that as they've gotten older.
My problem is I like what I like, but I probably couldn't tell you who sings what band is what. I can't tell you how many times I'll be in a group of people and they'll be like, "Oh, I love such and such," and I was like, "Yeah, I've never heard of that band," and they're like, "Yes, you have."
But you probably know like 5 or 6 songs.
Like 5 or 6 songs, right? Yeah. So that's my problem. I'm more. I mean, I could tell you who got drafted in the 5th round from some stupid college and where he went.
Your brain only has so much space,
right? So
there's only so much stuff you can fit in here, and I'm like a trivia nerd as well. I do have kind of this crazy weird thing where I do remember a lot of stuff. Not as much now that I need to remember as I probably should. Have gotten really good about like the calendar thing, but I'm a huge believer of like there's a finite amount of space in here, and I want what's in here to be the stuff that I care about. I'm not going to let the outside world tell me what I need to be thinking about all the time. It's just tough, when you do 6 hours of live radio every single day during the week. You have people that are yelling at you like, well, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you talking about that? And I'm just like, look, man, I'm doing the best that I can with the time that I have on this earth to try to enjoy stuff too. And I don't know, there's so many different, I just think it's very polarizing these days to just kind of pick and choose things that matter to you instead of things that people think you should be caring about.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Aaron.
I'm just thinking about how I can't imagine anybody wanting to hear me talk for 6 hours a day, every day.
It surprises me too, man.
I don't know I don't know that I have enough to talk about. That's got to be really hard to have, just enough to say.
Yeah. So just real quick, and I don't know how much of like my personal history anybody out there is really going to care about, but it started with sports. I'm a huge sports guy, and I like to talk. So many of us on planet Earth do, and I enjoy having good discussions with people. But my dad was a behind-the-scenes guy in radio, and just because of that, much like what we talked about before, there was no way I was ever going to get into radio. I mean, like, I want my own path. I want to carve my own path in life. So I went to school for sports administration at William Penn University down there in Oskaloosa, Iowa. And 2 years in, weird situation. They had a sports guy that left like 2 or 3 weeks before the start of baseball and softball. And traditionally, the radio station my dad works for broadcasts all the Ottumwa, my hometown, the Ottumwa High School baseball and softball games. So he basically gave me a little bit of an ultimatum, like, hey, you should do this, or you're going to make your own money working a fast food joint over the summer. And I did that. I hated that. I didn't want to go back to doing that. So I was like, how bad could it possibly be? I'm just going to go and call these games and, make $25 a game, which is nothing, but it's enough to get my parents off my back so I can just enjoy my summer the best that I can and not have to work at a fast food place. First year was terrible. I sounded bad. I don't have any of the real recordings, so if anybody asks, I was 19. I cared about how it sounded, but I was also kind of scared to death. I don't know how many people are listening to this stuff. I still know basically all these people that are playing the sport. because I just had graduated high school the year before. So, I'm kind of like feeling weird because I don't want to look like a geek or a nerd or have these, jocks who are a little younger than me, like hate my guts for sounding like a nerd on this baseball or softball broadcast. So the first year I was a little timid and scared and didn't really do a whole lot. Didn't know what I was doing. Halfway through the second year, they hired a guy to kind of be like the full-time sports guy, but he didn't want to take baseball and softball from me during the summers. And I got to tag along with him, and he asked if he'd call a couple games with me, and I watched him do some innings of baseball. It clicked for me like immediately. I was like, oh, it's not weird to try really hard at this. Because, like you want to be cool, right? Like, like I don't really care that much, right? But I did care. And then when I saw how much he cared and what he did to make himself sound so good, I don't know, something kind of went off. He liked me a lot. He gave me some football to do, some basketball to do. Not very good. I'm 20 at that time. But at that point, I'm like, I think I like doing this. So I did sports as a sports director. I got hired at a radio station in Oskaloosa shortly after college and was a sports director there and called a ton of sports for a ton of teams, college and high school, for roughly 4 years or so before I decided I kind of like my nights and my weekends. I like watching the sports and being a fan more than just like kind of having that zapped out of you. Because you're supposed to be not partial, like it's hard to enjoy sports in the same way when you're preparing for it and you're watching it so much, and also trying to be professional when you're at the events. So I got incredibly lucky that iHeartRadio gave me an opportunity to produce then Van and Bonnie in the mornings for 1040 WHO. And then I just got very pushy and very aggressive about like, hey, I'm totally fine doing this behind the scenes stuff, but just know that I can talk on the radio too. And fast forward, like I got to develop for a few years. I got my friend Sean Roberts and I got a Saturday morning show on KXNO for a couple years, which was fun. As I continued to develop, the news side of things really started to pick up after that. They started letting me sub. I got a chance to host my own Saturday morning show over there on 1040. And then by the middle of 2023, KFAB in Omaha was like, hey, we really like you and we have an open spot in the afternoons. But it's 4 hours. Like 4 hours at like every single day. Like what am I supposed to talk about for 4 hours? So I figured it out. It wasn't perfect. I'm still learning. It's been a year. Earlier this year, there was some shakeup, and then they asked if I wanted to do the 9 to 11 on WHO from Omaha. So I was like, yeah, what a great opportunity to stay connected to home. So 6 hours a day is a lot. I'm lucky enough they're in two different places. I kind of can reuse some material between the two shows, kind of get a dry run one way or the other and learn, how I want to talk about things. But 30 hours a week of talking on the radio is an awful lot. But I think it's a responsibility that I have, right? It's like I get to talk, but I also love talking to people. And so I love the interactivity of like bringing people on, having interviews, having callers call in with their concerns or things that they want to talk about or their viewpoints on things. And I think we can learn a lot even through a radio show, kind of like what you guys do here, just like, what are you seeing out there? You may not be a radio person, but you call into my show and you have a thought on something. Like that's valuable to me. It's like, oh, I never would have looked at it that way. And I think that's valuable for the listener as well. So I think that helps a lot too. But yeah, I back to the original point. That was a very long-winded way to say 6 hours a day is a lot.
That's the best guess we have is when they just keep talking and talking and talking. So
hey, I could go 6 hours if you want.
Clearly. Two things. I'm curious if you remember when you did Saturday morning pregame. I think the first time you and I met was when I went and played golf with you and Sean at the Hack Fest that first year you guys were doing that.
Yeah, and for sure. I was still pretty new to Des Moines at that point, and we had just, I think, done the show for a couple months before that happened. Yeah. Pre-COVID, the good days. But yeah, man, like that was such a fun event. Just what a great time. You just go out there. Everybody who's there, is aware or listens to regularly, the sports radio station. It has it's a smaller signal. Like if you look in the if you give everybody like list all the stations they listen to, sports radio is a niche, but it's the most passionate niche of any, I think, radio genre that you're ever going to find. And it was so cool to connect with people like you when you're out there and you get a chance to like meet each other. You get to talk face to face. You're not just talking through social media. You're not just talking through, one person's talking, listening to the other person through the radio airwaves. That was such a fun time. I miss being able to do stuff like that. I don't even know how you organize something like that in 2024 because everything changed after, like it was so easy when you could like every year. It's like, yeah, we're just going to do this. But then when COVID broke everything up, now it's like we have to go back to square one to figure out how we're going to do this again.
Yeah. You worked for several years with Van and Bonnie. What was that like? Tell us a little bit about working for that show and specifically for Van, who has done just tremendous amounts of radio. I mean, he's so well known here in Central Iowa, but then I think he was the station manager for KXNO for the longest time, and some of the groundbreaking stuff that he did. I have a very good friend of mine, Dave Campbell, who worked with him at the very beginning at WHO Radio as well. So I'm just curious what your thoughts and what you learned from working with Van and then Bonnie.
Yeah, I mean, this is a confession. I did not listen to Van and Bonnie before I worked for them. I was aware of who they were, but I was so kind of locked into the sports broadcasting thing that I was doing. I didn't have time to think about like other things. I was watching some of the other sportscasts around the state, but I wasn't paying close enough attention to them. I got hired. Van Harden never has a bad day. He wakes up. He'd go into there. He'd be there by probably 3 at the latest in the morning. The show doesn't go on until 4:59 a.m. So he's in there prepping. And he's the same every single day. If there was anything bothering him, you would never know. He didn't bring it into work. It was real easy for me to like show up and be like, man, I don't want to wake up this early. Or, you didn't get a great sleep the night before or something's nagging you. Or, in my case, I'd get a little itchy to do some other stuff and was, and he was always just such a rock. And you could talk to him about anything. He'd be so like open to that conversation. There's nobody like that anymore. If there's one lesson I learned from him, it is like, man, you don't have to have bad days. You don't have to bring your outside problems into work. You don't have to take your work problems home. And it doesn't help to create this sense of negativity around you. Now, I'm not perfect with that. I'm still very there are bad days all the time. But man, that guy was a cornerstone. And they're both in the Hall of Fame. I love Bonnie as well. Bonnie is very much the same way, incredibly professional. I only regret that I only got to work with them for a couple of years before they retired instead of, getting a chance to really develop it in my early 20s with them. But I mean, they're in the Iowa Broadcaster Hall of Fame for a reason because they won the awards. They had the accolades. They were dominant in the ratings in the most important time slot you could possibly be in. And there's just something about that kind of professionalism every single day. There's no bad days. And it's difficult to do that. I'm finding it generally impossible, at least one, like having 5 great days in a row. You would never guess that anything's wrong with them. They'd show up and they would be rock solid every single day. And they've always been great advocates for the people that work there. Like you said, Van actually helped start KXNO. He saw something in radio that so few people saw. And it's kind of like a bygone generation a little bit of people who saw the power of radio. And nowadays, with all the different outlets of media that we have, it's difficult to tell people what that feels like, right? It's just like how important the radio used to be as a news source. The problem is it's still that important. And people just don't see it that way because it's my dad or my granddad did it that way. And I don't want to do that. I got all this other stuff on my cell phone. So I don't know. I just wish I could capture a little bit of that from both of them of just like every single day show up. And as important as you think it is, it may rub off to the people that are trying to listen to you.
Funny little known fact that before it was Van and Bonnie, that was actually Van and Connie. That's how old I am, that I remember that he had a host before Bonnie and her name was Connie. So I always found that they hired Bonnie, and I was like, maybe they just did that so it would be easy to transition.
How does that happen? Like, what are the odds?
Right.
Like of like only needing to replace one letter in the name, like,
Right.
and it worked, right? Like, it ended up working, and they both ended up going to the Hall of Fame together a few years ago. I mean, great people though. I mean, true legends of not just the industry, but like you mentioned, of Iowa. You know, like they are Iowa in their own way. And there's just people can pretend and try to be them, and try to emulate them. Like I'm, hopefully going to emulate, Van and Bonnie for my entire career. But unfortunately, there will never be another. And you got to kind of find your own way to channel what they were able to do so well.
Yeah. So you moved to Omaha. I'm curious. I wondered about this when you did this. You're young. You're freshly married. How hard of a move was that to just up and move to a completely new city, and start there? I know obviously that was the opportunity, right? The job opportunity was there. But I remember I was in a men's group thing, and I remember a story that a gentleman told that him and his young wife had moved to Sioux City, and they were all on their own. And he said it was one of the best things they had done for their marriage was moving and being on their own, because then they had to rely on each other. So I'm curious, is kind of speak a little bit about that. Yeah, I mean, Omaha's 2 hours. It's not like you moved 1,000 miles away, but it was a big transition for you, I think.
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough in my life to kind of make gradual transitions in life, and been kind of independent to do that. So I'm from Ottumwa. I went to college in Oskaloosa. Now that's just 30 minutes away, and it's actually a smaller town, but you can't get yourself into too much trouble in a place like Oskaloosa. And if I needed anything, I was just 30 minutes away from mom and dad. Mom and dad, they did the best that they could for me, but I have a younger sister. There wasn't a lot of like resources. I had to make my own money if I wanted to spend it for the most part. That gave me a real sense of responsibility very quickly, and how much money could you possibly spend in a place like Oskaloosa. So that was such a great way to learn how to live. I got very lucky that after I graduated college, I got to stay there for a few years. And then I got the job in Des Moines. Now, Des Moines is about an hour and a half away from Ottumwa and where my family was. My wife and I married while we were still in Oskaloosa, so we actually married pretty young. And we had been married for a couple of years by the time that I moved to Des Moines, but her family's from like the Prairie City and Monroe area. So we were actually still about half hour away from anybody that we needed on her side of the family as well. And that was really nice. The Omaha thing is a little different because you are going so far away from everybody that you know before. But you mentioned it. At some point, you have to decide what's most important to you. I had gotten kind of like glass ceiling, like neck kind of craned up against the glass ceiling, as I felt like I had done everything I possibly could do in Des Moines. And I'm a very much like a chase the carrot kind of guy. And it's good to feel wanted. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think we all kind of feel that way about everything in life, right? Like
you put a lot of hard work in, and you want to see some validation to it, and that people give a shit that you're not just speaking into the wind.
Yeah, and it's just like, what better way to feel rewarded than have a station in a city twice the size of Des Moines basically say, hey, we really like what you could do. We don't really care that you haven't hosted an everyday show before. We want to give you an opportunity to learn how to do that, and we'll help work with you to make that happen. I mean, I have to take that chance. Now, if I end up sucking really badly and it doesn't work out for anybody, I can at least look in the mirror at some point and say, you know what, I tried and it just didn't work out. I wanted to live in Des Moines the rest of my life. If I could have just been Van Harden, I would have done that. Unfortunately, that's just not how life goes a lot of the time. So you kind of have to go where the opportunity goes. My wife's very supportive and is like totally down with that. We made the transition. It's weird. It's really weird knowing that I'm really only going to see my family just a few times a year now. I mean, it's really kind of tough to correlate between my sister. She lives in Centerville now, down by the Missouri border. She's much closer to my parents than I am. I'm only going to see them, 3-4 times a year, if that. We have to make a concerted effort to go over there. once or twice a year if we're going to see them at all as well. But you realize how important that effort is too. Of like, okay, now we actually have to try. We should try. Like, how much do you really want to see each other? And I think that's been good for me and my family relationships as much as anything, because you kind of take it for granted when you're 30 minutes away or even an hour, hour and a half away. So I think it's been a real positive move. It was hard. It costs a lot of money to move. I don't know if you've moved recently, but I mean, buying the house, trying to find it is 10 out of 10 would not recommend. I will say that. But at the same time,
unless you're going to use Green Beret Realty and Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage.
Yeah, what he said. And but honestly, like if you were ever going to move, a good realtor that you trust is like, I think 80% of the battle. Everything else, it's just got to happen. So we've been able to embrace it. Omaha's been great. It's really kind of Des Moines feel. Like the vibes are very similar. It's just bigger. There's as much going on in Des Moines as there is in a lot of other cities. People don't give it enough credit. Omaha's like that, except bigger. And like you said, I'm I-80 away from just like a couple hours back, and I can, catch up with people, be at an event, have the opportunity to see some people. So it's like the next step, the next progression. I don't know if I'm ever going to move again. If I did, though, it would have to be very specific. Like I only really have like 5 or 6 places I think I would even consider, barring like, hey, here's $1 million a year. Please go live in Tacoma. And it's like, Tacoma, $1 million a year. You're like, oh, I guess Tacoma, right? But
now you're speaking Aaron's language.
Do you have to live in Tacoma, or can you live in like Bonnie?
Get one of those high-speed rails going, and like live in Seattle or something, and then you can like make it a little bit easier. I don't know. I got to tell you though, if anybody out there is listening to this and looking for like advice from a guy in his early 30s, it's like, just what's like the one thing that you've learned through like moves? The number one thing is have less stuff. You don't need stuff, especially when you can like put stuff on like social media these days, like memories and all that stuff. You don't need hard, photo albums. You don't need to buy like all this outlandish stuff. Like, I went to a Quaker college too, which probably also kind of instilled some of this in me, but it just be simple. Like, you don't have to have these convoluted things. And trust me, after you move a moving truck, when you're, 32 years old, you're kind of like, I could never do that again and be okay. And so I'm a big believer of just like, just send me money. Like, don't even buy stuff for me. Just send me money. Like, I don't want none of it. Like, I know you want to be cute and you want to buy me like a couch or something. Mom and Dad, I appreciate that. Just give me the money. Like, let's just like, please.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really good advice. Have less stuff. I moved from Dallas to Seattle at 38, and we got rid of a lot of shit.
Is I mean, like, okay, so I mean, that's get a giant truck and make like one trip with it, right?
Well, I hired a Allied Van Lines semi, right? So I took up part of a trailer because we got rid of a lot of stuff because it's by weight. So it was like $6,000, right? Almost 8 years ago, so 7.5, to move all of our stuff. So we got rid of like a washer and dryer, and there were things where if you dollar cost averaged it out, it was like, oh, it's going to cost me more to move this than to just go buy a new one.
Yeah,
so
that
gave away
right there,
stuff, all of that. But I was really wanting. You might have seen me start laughing when you started with, I don't know how much money you think you could spend in Ottumwa or whatever. And I was waiting for you to hang a right hand and go, but it turns out you can't. Waiting for I made some mistakes.
In Oskaloosa.
In Oskaloosa. Yeah. Okay. So here's the cool thing about living in a place like Oskaloosa. And I don't want anybody who is listening to this who knows Oskaloosa or lives in any of the 100 other Iowa communities that probably resemble Oskaloosa in some way. They got their city square. They might have a small college in town. Very passionate about their kids and their activities. Very slow to progress to join the rest of the metropolitan areas and add bike lanes and brand new buildings for a YMCA or anything like that. There are 100 of them in Iowa. I don't want this to sound condescending to them at all. There's no way to spend money there. You literally would just have to eat at restaurants every single meal. You would have, I was a bowler, I was in bowling league. It costs, like $15 a week to be in bowling league. It's fun, it's just like any other recreational activity. You'd have to be in like 6 bowling leagues. Okay. Or just not have a job at all. You might, based on, per capita, how much money you're bringing in versus how much you're spending. Maybe if you didn't have a job, you could get there, but there's just not a lot of stuff we're spending money on in those places, except, for me, I spent $100,000 on student loans that I, unfortunately, at this day and age, 15 years since I started college, basically, and I am still paying that money back. Other than that, it's just hard to spend money. So I don't go to Dallas, don't go to Kansas City or St. Louis or Chicago or Minneapolis for college. Don't go to any of those big, crazy places. Go to your small, little private or even public community college. You're going to have a hard time spending a lot of money there. And that's another thing. I'll go in the memoir. I'm going to put a whole chapter about that. Kids try to be too cool and have these crazy, awesome memories. And I'm sure a lot of people have crazy, awesome memories of going to cool places. My first choice was Dallas. I wanted to go to Southern Methodist University. And then you sit down with your parents and you're just like, how are we going to make this work? And then you start writing the numbers down and you're just like, what am I doing? Who could do this? And eventually, you just come to the realization, or I could just go up the road 30 minutes and go to school, get the same degree, spend a lot less money, and have the opportunity to come home whenever I want. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being simple. I don't know.
That's so funny you say that. I actually applied for several colleges and on a whim applied for San Diego State because I had been in San Diego the previous year for a bowl game with some friends. Yeah. And I got accepted. And my dad was like, you are absolutely not fucking going to San Diego State, which in hindsight was probably a good idea because I couldn't even focus when I was in Ames. I got kicked out after 3 semesters for grades. So I can imagine how much less time I would have lasted in San Diego with all those distractions.
Yeah, so I
got distracted in Ames.
So, but that's the other thing too, right? So I got a little disgruntled in school. You'll find this to be kind of a pattern for me. If things are the same for too long, I have a hard time staying with it. And unfortunately, I did pretty well in school, all things considered. I finished a high enough GPA to get into grad school afterwards. But I was put on academic probation after my 3rd semester. Maybe it was my 4th or 5th. I can't remember. It was
Same.
But right, it's you get put on academic probation, you try to figure out why. It's just well, you didn't show up to this class more than a few times. You did none of the homework or the assignments in this one. So and then you dropped 2 other classes, so you were barely at the 12 credit hours you needed to be able to do this anyway. In Oskaloosa, Iowa, it's hard to manufacture excuses. So when that happened, I was like, man, if I'm going to get this degree, I just got to suck it up and finish this thing off. And I did okay after that. San Diego would have been a nightmare for me. San Diego is, until this vacation I just took to Europe, my literal favorite place in the world. If there was ever a place that I could be dream location to live in, that's the place. It's a lot more expensive. There are distractions of all kinds there. Going to college there wouldn't have been a good idea. At the same time, when you're 18 years old, you kind of want to make those memories more than you want to think with your head. So that's why it's important to have that father or mother figure kind of jump in and be you realize how stupid that is, right? And you're well, now that you mention it, yeah.
I mean, the stupid choices didn't end there. I then tried to switch to leisure studies, and that didn't go over very well either. So,
hey, look what you're doing now, right?
That's a famous story where he got off the phone with me and he looked at my mom and he goes, I don't know what the fuck leisure studies is, but he can be leisure at home for free. I'm not spending $500 a semester for that shit. So
Look, and and this is a great example, right? Like now look what you're up to. Now look what you're doing, right? And this is the other thing too. We all have mistakes. We all have regrets. Who doesn't regret things? But the real gumption, Rocky Balboa said this in the movie aptly titled Rocky Balboa, where he sits there and he talks to his son, who he has a terrible relationship with, and basically says, it's not about how much you get knocked down. We all get knocked down. It's about getting up. That's how winning is done. And I don't know, man. It's just kind of like, to me, that's what life is all about. Yeah, I might want to be an idiot when I'm 18 years old. If I end up being an idiot or I get kicked out of school or I have some situation like that, my journey's not over. I can still figure things out. There's not a manual that tells me like how life is supposed to go. So look what you're doing now. Look what you've accomplished now. Look at all the different people you've been able to touch, the way that you guys are doing this right now. It's making an impact different ways all over the place, on top of the other stuff that you guys do. That's what I think everybody's goal should be, is that, you know what, I'm never going to have it 100% figured out, but it's a matter of getting more knowledge in my brain to understand what life actually is. And, you know, yeah, my journey looks a little bit more straight and narrow compared to what yours was, but I still got a degree in something I haven't done at all anything with since I graduated, and I'm still paying actual American illegal tender for it 15 years after I started it. At the same time, that's okay, because without, like, if you remove that, there's no way I do end up like doing what I'm doing now. So yeah, you might have got kicked out after 3 semesters for getting yourself distracted in Ames High, which, by the way, I actually drove up to Ames, hang out with some buddies a few times. I would have never made it a semester there. I would have never even wanted to go to class. The dorms are so fun. Like, you can just hang out with people. The house parties. There are blocks of house parties going on. You know how many house parties were going on in Oskaloosa after a football game? If you could find the one, it was a big one, but there was usually only one. So I don't know, man. I think it's also another thing that you guys can put in your memoir of just like, hey, you know what? You never quite figure it all out, but it's a matter of keeping, like, trying to figure it out. And I don't know. I feel like you got to feel pretty happy about where you're at now, right?
I tell the story because I think it's got a pretty good redemption story, because, you know, I went back, I got my degree. I got a degree in political science. I worked for 20 years in IT, and now I'm on the cusp of being a director of marketing. So what does that tell you? So
there's no straight lines.
There's no straight lines whatsoever. Let's take a break. We're going to get a break from Revelton and from Greenberry Realty. And then when we come back, I'll let you and Aaron talk travel, because I don't do near as much travel. And you went on an amazing trip. We'd love to hear about that. And Aaron can pick your brain, because I think he's going to Ireland next year. So you guys can swap some Europe stories. So let's get a word from Greenberry Realty and Revelton Distilling Company.
Making great tasting bourbon requires the perfect combination of ingredients, conditions, and time. The longer it rests, the better it tastes. Revelton Distillery's new single barrel bourbon is made from 80% corn, sourced 100% from Iowa farmers. And unlike mass-produced bourbons, each barrel of Revelton's single barrel bourbon is unique, proofed on when it tastes best. As they like to say, it'll be ready when it's ready. And to ensure the highest standards of quality and flavor, owners Rob and Christy Taylor oversee the production and bottling. Every single barrel. Iowa born, Iowa aged, Iowa bottled. Try the new single barrel bourbon from Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com.
In 2023, a crack Green Beret named Dan Douglas retired his military command and promptly escaped to a full-time career in real estate. Today, this man is wanted by home buyers and sellers who want to survive the process without spending a fortune. If you have a home to sell or want to buy one, maybe you can hire Dan Douglas at Green Beret Realty. You can find him at greenberetrealty.com. greenberetrealty.com.
All right, we're back again. Thanks to our amazing sponsors, Revelton Distilling Company, Green Beret Realty, Andrew at AKC Marketing, and then Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. Couldn't do the pods, couldn't do Three Beards Media without you guys, so go check them all out. Emery, you just got back from an amazing looking trip in Europe. Your first dive into the European continent, is that what you said earlier?
Yeah. So my wife and I, one of the things that we kind of decided to, I never got to travel at all pretty much when I was growing up. It was not something that was important to my family. Not that we really had a lot of resources. I went on some school trips, but those are school trips. They're not really vacations. My wife, very similar situation there. So what we wanted to do is we bought like one of those. It's kind of like a timeshare, but it's really like a resort package where you can kind of move it around and stay in different places. And we bought that, and we have like payments on that, with the idea that if you're going to use it, you got to use it. If you don't, you're just putting money into something that you'll never use. So we've gone to a lot of amazing places in the United States over the last, both coasts over the last handful of years. So we did the move, right? And when you move, it's just kind of like, there's no way you're going on a good vacation after that for a while. You kind of have to restock the resource pile. We did a quick little trip to Branson over Christmas because we got a good deal on a resort there. And it was fine. It was a good time for what it was. But I was like, man, we need a big one. How about we go to Europe for the first time? And I'd just been doing some reading about this place called Andorra. I don't know if you've heard of Andorra before, but it's a tiny micronation sandwiched between France and Spain. You can't fly there. You can't take a train there. You can only drive there. It's in the middle of the Pyrenees Mountains. It's just one of the most incredibly unique places that you could ever go. And I was like, man, it'd be fun to go there. I love going to weird places like that. Well, the only way to get there, like I said, you're going to have to fly to like Barcelona or Toulouse, France. And so I was like, well, Barcelona looks cooler than Toulouse, no disrespect. You can do Barcelona and Andorra and kind of just add Barcelona to that trip. And then we put in Madrid and Toulouse as well into those cool, awesome 21st century cheap flight websites that we pay money to. And like a week later, it said, hey, Madrid's got like $500 tickets right now for the time that you're looking. And we're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to add Madrid to the trip too. It was like 10 days. It was an incredible time. There was a lot of weird stuff that went down. My wife lost her cell phone on the first night we were there in a taxi cab in Barcelona. Guy spoke like no English, but still had the wherewithal, found it about an hour later, brought it back to our hotel, saved our lives basically, because I didn't figure out the SIM card problem of my phone until after that. So I had no way to like get a hold of the people at my cell phone company to turn my roaming on. I gotta tell you, dude, there were a lot of weird things that we just didn't know about because we were rookies. But man, anybody that's even kind of thinking about Europe, I couldn't, and Aaron, you can speak on this a little bit better than me probably, but like, it's the United States and North America has a lot of cool different things. Nothing that you see on this continent is ever going to look like the stuff over there. It is just such a different vibe and a different feel. And it was so awesome to see that in person and to be there. I don't know which place I want to do next over there, but there's so many different, like London, Rome, Paris, Athens, like all those big ones. But there's also some cool ones like Prague or Scandinavia, like Norway and stuff that I think would be cool. I don't know. I'm just kind of addicted to the thought of it.
Yeah. So we kind of are too. I was pretty fortunate growing up in that we took family vacations, but never out of the country. I've been to almost all of the states in the United States. I think I'm missing like 5, North Dakota being one. I'm gonna have to.
I was gonna say North Dakota is like the one I just can't
some kind of special trip someday just to go to North Dakota.
Just to be there, right? Like there's got to be something that you can go like spend a weekend up there somehow, right? Do they have airports there?
Yeah, you can fly into Fargo.
Corn Palace. Go to that Corn Palace. That's what you got to do.
That's in South Dakota. I've actually been there. Right. That's in Mitchell, South Dakota. I went to South Dakota because I did band camp there. That was like the furthest we went as a family, and we had to go see the Corn Palace. That was the big thing my mom and dad wanted to go see. Impressive building. Not quite sure it's worth the hype. Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, no. You go to Fargo if you're into college football. Going to a game in the Fargo Dome might be fun.
There you go. Good
Yeah,
football being played up there, I hear.
right. So yeah, North Dakota, New Jersey, believe it or not, Florida, which actually I'm gonna knock off the list next March.
How do you not go to Florida? Isn't that like everybody's first big vacation is Florida?
Nah, no, not me.
Why not? What? Okay, so you're a grown man.
I have zero desire to go to Disneyland or World, whichever one it is in Florida. Who gives a shit? This
is as controversial as the Hamilton take. This is.
Yeah, I have no desire to go to any of that. And so like Florida, New Jersey, North Dakota, Vermont,
the
Alaska,
trees. It's the Vermont for the fall trees.
Yeah, Alaska and Rhode Island. So
Rhode Island's another one. It's just like, man, you just kind of have to. Yeah. You just have to kind of find something to do for a day and say that you were there.
Yeah, so I know a guy that lives in Hartford, Connecticut, that from when we used to do bitter units still, a guy that's a brewer up there that is looking to open a brick and mortar. He's been kind of gypsy brewing a little bit the last few years. And
a little day trip over to Providence or something?
Yeah, right, because it's like an hour and a half. I mean,
yeah,
it's not that far. So I'll knock them out eventually. But as far as Europe goes, I'd never been to Europe until last spring, not this past one, the spring before.
Sure.
So we went for my wife and I's 10th anniversary. And then we took our, at that time, 13-year-old daughter. Maybe she was still 12. Whatever. We went to Scotland.
Nice.
So flew over from Seattle to London, then London up to Glasgow.
So Seattle to London, like what are you looking at there? Like
about
11
hours.
That's not so bad. It was 9.5 from Dallas to Madrid. And did you do that overnight?
Yeah, overnight. So we left took off at like 7 p.m. or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I made sure we sat on the left side of the plane. So as we flew north around the earth, we got to see the northern lights out the left side of the plane.
Nice.
Savvy. I travel a lot for my regular job, so it's like savvy traveler knowledge stuff there.
Yeah, there you go.
And then got into Glasgow because it was cheaper to fly into Glasgow than Edinburgh, even though we were going to Edinburgh.
Sure.
And hired a car because when you get in after a really long day of travel, spend the extra money on a car service.
How long?
It was like an hour and 20-minute drive.
Okay, now see, that's way too long to like commit yourself to. Do they have the trains over there?
They do. We could have taken a train, but we got in at like 7 o'clock at night, so it was dark, and it's like the train would have cost me like $75 maybe for all three of us, and the car service was $125 to not have to deal with it. On the first night you get there.
Yeah, for sure.
Worth it, right? So if you've got something like that, that's definitely something I would recommend.
Okay, and I did the opposite. So we got into Madrid. It was like 2:30. We got like a 3:15 train from, maybe it was a little longer than that. It was like 4 o'clock or so. I can't remember. That you know how it goes. You're on that plane for so long. I didn't sleep hardly at all, and everything's just kind of a blur after that. And we could not. Everything's in Spanish. So we're like, we take a train from, again, it sounds stupid, right? I'm going to Spain. Of course, everything's going to be in Spanish. But I didn't like think like how my brain, I felt ready, like I had done, some Spanish stuff to like get myself ready for what I needed to learn how to say, or things that I need to like recognize when somebody says it, because I didn't take Spanish growing up in high school. I took French like an idiot, right?
I did. Emery and I are getting more and more alike, man. I took French too.
Seriously, and as I'm learning it, right, it just like I accidentally flip into French so often, and my wife's like, "You're saying stuff that nobody will understand what you're saying over there." It's just like, I don't know. Anyway, we get into the airport. You have to take like a train specifically from the airport to the train station to catch your high speed train. So we figured that out just in time to get over there. Customs took forever, by the way. And we're like, we may not make this train. And then we show up to the train station, and I can't read a lick of anything. There are multiple terminals with different platforms for these trains. And I'm like, I have no idea where to go. I keep showing people my ticket. They're looking at me like I'm an idiot. I got to tell you, it worked. It worked out for us. And it's like a 6.5 hour trip from Madrid to Barcelona. And we were trying to go to Barcelona that first night. We made it on the train that we were supposed to get on with like a minute or two to spare before that thing left. And it was nice to go 180 miles an hour, from Madrid to Barcelona and be there in a couple hours instead of the 6.5 hour drive. But I got to tell you, having to worry about that after a 9.5 hour flight was a nightmare.
Yeah.
A complete nightmare.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons one, that I booked the car, and two, for our first European trip, we went to a place that spoke English.
That was a good move.
We could navigate some of those types of things and figure out customs and travel and how all of this stuff works without having to try to do it in a foreign language.
Have you done it like Mexico or the Caribbean at all?
I wouldn't know. Haven't been to either one of those places either.
Okay. Yeah. So we figured customs is going to be very similar to that. It took like 4 times as long in Spain. Like we were in that customs line forever.
I didn't customs in, I guess it was London. Yeah, I think we went through customs in London when we landed, and because we had to switch.
Right.
Terminals. We had to go from international to domestic to fly up. Like 5 minutes. It was nothing. We walked up there and it was like, what are you doing here? Vacation. Okay. You got anything you need?
And that's the same thing, but they just like, I don't know. And I don't know what your experience was, because I feel like airports forgot how to do stuff after COVID, but it's like, okay. So I was in the Madrid airport. Maybe this was Chicago when we came back. I can't remember. It's all, like I said, everything looks the same in my mind, but there's like 24 or 30 different booths for this customs line. And there are thousands of people getting off of planes every hour in this major airport. Like Madrid is a bigger city than Chicago is, like population wise. And the airport's almost as much of a nightmare. And there's like 4 or 5 of those windows open. And wow. I'm just like, and it's going so slowly. And they're like even moving people to different lines to try to like balance it all out. But it's not making anything go any faster because they still have only 4 or 5 people. And I don't understand how you could have the existing infrastructure that these planes or these airports have with the idea that this could be an enjoyable and quick experience if you double that and have just 8 of them open instead of 32 or whatever, how many windows you have possible. That would have been so much faster. But unfortunately, in these giant, big places, either they can't find enough people to work or they mismanage their workforce to the point where everybody missed their flight. I mean, like, we had a 5-hour layover. We were okay. But it's like, I couldn't imagine, like, trying to tighten that thing up to, like, 2.5 hours and just be sitting there in the middle of that line watching it go that slowly. So I'm going to have to keep that in mind next trip. I might just knock out the UK.
Yeah, and I think there's specific airports where, like Heathrow is a nightmare if you have to switch terminals. Right. Like when we landed, we had to go out of security and then go back through security because we were going from international through customs, and then we had to go through security to get on the plane to go to Glasgow. And if we'd had, I think we had an 1.5-hour layover. I don't know if you could do it any shorter than that. I mean, we made it, and it wasn't like we were running through. We weren't O.J. Simpson our way through the airport or anything. But
is it like
pushing it?
Is it
right?
big? Yeah. Is it like the space in the building? Is it big? Like, is it hard to get from one Like
yeah,
from
you have to go down and catch
Steer.
a train and do some other things at Heathrow, right? Because there's 5 terminals.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was tough, but yeah, give yourself plenty of time the first time and go someplace simple. That would be maybe my best advice.
We're really happy we went to Spain. It was an awesome time. We had a lot of fun. That is a great piece of advice.
Yeah, we're looking to go to Ireland next year for the Iowa State football game.
Yeah, that's going to be a blast because you're going to be with so many people that are going to be experiencing that for the first time with you as well.
Yeah, and we're going to land and we're going to go in a week early. Actually, probably 10 days before the game.
Do a full proper vacation
and go over to Galway and spend like a week, and then 3 days in Dublin itself for around the game, and fly home the day after the game. Well, maybe the Monday after the game. It depends on what kind of deal I can find. But we're getting out of Dublin. We're going to see Guinness and Jameson and do some of that stuff. But
I thought you said you were going to spend 10 days at the Guinness distillery.
Well, I could. Probably. I don't think my wife would enjoy that. But and then, so just to wrap up this segment, because I'm sure people really love hearing us talk about travel.
Hey, I've had so many people ask about this more than anything else I've ever done. So I actually think they do kind of like living vicariously through those of us who, get a chance to prioritize this stuff, because it is hard to plan this kind of thing. But once you've done it, you realize like how much, and this, I mean, I'm speaking for myself here. It really kind of fills me up, right? Like of just like that kind of experience, and knowing that there's a good chance I'll never see that part of the world ever again, so like to have that opportunity, getting to watch a college football game in Ireland, that's going to be a treat.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. It'll be fun. My wife doesn't care about college football, but it's an excuse for her to go to Ireland, so it worked out.
Sure.
But as far as places that I want to go, you mentioned a couple of yours. I really want to go to Portugal. I wanted to go to Croatia along the coast, Split, and down through those areas. It's supposed to be awesome.
Yeah.
We had a trip before the pandemic planned to go to Athens and Crete, and then we had to cancel that. So we'll probably circle back to that at some point. And then
that is gonna, like, that to me is so high on my list. Like the history of like thousands of years that is still like there, and you can like be there and see that and experience that. I 100% want to go there very soon.
Yeah, and then we're already planning. I'm not planning it, but I know when we're going to go. But Rome and Italy, the summer after my daughter graduates from high school, because my grandmother was a World War II bride from Naples, Italy. So I've got relatives and cousins and things that I've talked to on the phone or met because they came over once for, over the years or here and there. And we're going to go see all of those people. But the idea is to take my daughter when she's, basically 18 after she gets out of high school, and then probably maybe leave her there for like a month, and say, figure it out, kid, and come home,
Might want to learn some Italian.
And then go to college, right? And then she'll be out of college after that. But so yeah, that's the plan. I enjoy traveling as well. But there's definitely some do's and don'ts and things that you don't know until you talk to somebody about it or experience it yourself. That
people listening to this conversation are going to be like, I might want to go do some of this stuff. This is why it's important to share it. Our COVID vacation was Vancouver. That was planned and obviously got wiped out. We never have made that trip either. So that's definitely on my list of international travel that I'd like to go. I've always wanted to go to Australia. Like the Australia thing is just logistically kind of a nightmare. Like you really need to like build in multiple travel days on both ends of that to kind of get there.
I'm looking at the Asia stuff, probably more for after retirement. Where I just don't have to be on as tight a schedule.
Right.
Because I'd like to do Thailand and, Japan and Australia and New Zealand,
Japan too, right? Like what a place in pictures, Japan just looks like you're in a different planet, and I would love to experience that. It's just how do you get there? How much time do you need to leave yourself? Tokyo is one of like the biggest cities in the entire world. And unfortunately, like I know I did like Madrid and Barcelona, which are, the places to go in Spain, but you're not really getting like what the core of Spain really is, right? Like you need to go to like a smaller place like Girona, which is just up the coast a little bit from Barcelona. They're living like legitimate Spain there, and I like enjoying that part of it too, right? Like I just want to know what life is like there, not just like, hey, we have these couple of really nice cities that you should come check out if you're a tourist. We'll have a bunch of stuff that you can do. And in English, you want to know what I did? I found an Irish pub that was showing NFL games on Sunday in Barcelona. And all of the bartenders were like legit Irish, right? Like they had a couple of soccer matches and stuff on, and I was there, I thought, to watch some soccer. But like as soon as the NFL game started, they had TVs that were showing the NFL games. It's an Irish pub in Barcelona that was showing National Football League games. It's crazy.
That's funny.
It's hard to explain. Yeah.
We've got 2 more segments. They're real quick segments here, Emery. We're going to ask you the Kyle Lehman podcast question, which I'm assuming Aaron does not have, so I'll make one up. And do you have a question?
I make them up every time you ask, so I don't know what's different for you.
All right. And when we come back after hearing a word from Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage, Aaron will ask you the Wintrust Mortgage question of the pod.
Whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing your home, or if it's simply time to renovate the one you're already living in, you need an experienced mortgage professional to help you analyze your financing options and to make sure the closing goes smoothly. And that's exactly what you get when you call Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. Kyle's experience and expertise, coupled with Wintrust's rates and programs, ensures you'll get the mortgage that's right for you. You may even qualify for down payment assistance. Before you reach out to a realtor, call Kyle and get pre-qualified, empowering you to start shopping for the home of your dreams. Call Kyle at 515-473-0546. Kyle Lehman Wintrust Mortgage, 515-473-0546.
All right, and we're back. All right, Aaron, go ahead.
Okay, fine. I'm going to make it topical to the last segment and rework the old standby question.
Okay.
You were just in Spain. I hope you were not eating McDonald's every day while you were there, but enjoying the Spanish fare that was available to you. So the question
did have McDonald's once for the record. I did eat McDonald's once.
I saw that video.
Well, it's not the same as the U.S., so you do kind of have to check it out. But
yeah, it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was crazy.
Yeah. So you and your lovely bride have been out all night doing whatever it is you do when you're out and about, and you need something to eat. What are you going to? What are you getting when you're in Spain that is a must-have for anybody that goes to Spain to check out and try?
Okay, so this is I am a simple, the theme of this is I'm actually an incredibly simple person. If I know I like something and I know it's available to me, why would I try something else? Shouldn't I shouldn't I intentionally be making decisions that I know I'm going to enjoy?
No.
That's where but my wife's the opposite, right? And she's always just like, no, that's not how all this is going to go. And I am a real chief subscriber to happy wife, happy life. So as much as I would be totally willing to find a burger joint or a steak shack somewhere that I could, just get something that I know I'm going to be able to devour quickly, my wife is very much the opposite and wants to explore and do stuff. So I usually will tag along. I will find something that I know I will enjoy eating in some way, in some fashion. Big thing in Spain is a thing called tapas. Have you heard of tapas before? It's like these little tiny, it's not hors d'oeuvres, but they're like, it's literally like a snack kind of thing. And they have so many different types of them. Barcelona, underrated seafood place. It's on the ocean. It shouldn't be, but every fish or every, like shrimp and stuff that I had there was so good. Again, I live in the middle of the United States of America. There isn't a lot of seafood that is going to be caught in I don't know, prepared here. You kind of have to get it from different places. So I don't know how great it is, but if you're in Barcelona, tapas with some fish on it or some shrimp on it is dynamite. There's one place in Madrid, and this isn't necessarily food, although they do serve food there. It's a Chicago speakeasy that we accidentally found in the middle of Madrid. And it's like you have to go, they don't have a website, but they do have an Instagram. They don't post on the Instagram, but on their Instagram, there is a story that they have up for 1 month that is the password. And you walk past it and you could put it in. It's called Bad Company 1920. And you put it into your GPS. And you're wandering these streets in the middle of a very busy district in Madrid. And you're like, where is this thing? There is a door kind of in between two, like a restaurant on one side and like a haircut place on the next side. And it's just a door and it's blacked out. It's like there's a door behind the door. And it's got like the little, the thing from the movies where, like they open the little eye hole door, right? But you can't knock on the door because there's glass there. So you have the glass there. How do you contact these people? Because the only thing that tells you that this is the door is there's a little sign at the very top, like an awning that says Bad Company at the top. You're like, okay, this is the right place. How do you get in? They have a little like ring doorbell thing next to it that you have to press the button to ring. Somebody answers just like, Bad Company, what do you want? Kind of thing. And you have to say the password. So I go on their Instagram. The password for me in English was, I have $50. So he answers the thing and I said, I have $50. And he said, great. He's like, he's Spanish, but he's speaking English to me. I'll send somebody up quick and let you in. This angry Spanish guy with all these tattoos comes up about 3 minutes later, opens the door. It's like, yeah. And then you have to tell him again, I have $50. And so anybody that's walking on the street is just like, what the hell's going on here? And then he lets you in. As soon as I got in, and I kid you not, he pulls a gun on us. Now, it's a fake gun, but like in the moment, you're like, whoa, what is going on here? And he's just like, he's telling you some instructions that takes you downstairs. It is a legit speakeasy. They don't want you on your phones or anything. It is so cool. They have a ton of different, like a seasonal, like cocktail menu. The food is American, so you'll hate this, but they had awesome fried chicken. They had excellent, like, they had like, those like homemade kind of curly French fries. Had those. Oh, like it was filling me up with those cocktails, man. So in Barcelona, you got to get the seafood tapas. In Madrid, you got to get you got to stop by Bad Company 1920. It is just a fun experience, but also the food actually is really good. I found out the restaurant next door is actually under, like the bar is owned by the same people as underneath it. Right. But it's really cool. And then Andorra, I went to Andorra. We were there, and Andorra is very Spanish, French kind of like fusion. It's a very strange kind of eclectic mix there. I would say not necessarily food, but they have some of the best coffee shop that I've ever been at. And just incredibly inventive. They really care about that sort of thing. It's a much slower pace than like Barcelona and Madrid there. And we went to this coffee shop called Grupeta, which is in the little tiny village of La Massana in Andorra. And like those ladies just make the best like coffee. They have these really cool croissant, cinnamon roll kind of hybrid things. Fantastic place. So there you go. There's a few different things in Spain that I would tell people in those different locales to check out.
Interesting. Cool. All right, we're going to wrap up with our last segment. This is a partially sponsored, we're asking for a donation to a charity segment that we have here. famously, Steph Copley was on our podcast in our early creation and told one of the hosts that was on this show that is not currently on right now to shut the fuck up so she could get her point across. And it was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. So we decided to sponsor it. So we're asking people to donate to the Young Women's Resource Center in honor of Steph Copley's STFU moment. We're going to get a word from Steph. And then when we come back, Emery, the way this segment works is Aaron and I have to shut the fuck up, and you can say whatever you want, and we're not allowed to react or say a word about it. So
any topic you want,
any topic you want. Yeah, there's no limits here. So let's get a word from Steph.
Hey everybody, it's Steph Copley, the woman behind the STFU segment on the Old Man Strength podcast. When I told the guys I wanted to sponsor this segment, they recommended that I make a charitable donation instead, so that's what I did. I chose the Young Women's Resource Center in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a nonprofit that supports, educates, and advocates for girls and young women ages 10 to 24. Their whole goal is to make sure that these young women become strong, self-confident, and successful. And if you know me at all, you know that aligns with my goals as well. If you're interested and would like to donate, check them out at ywrc.org and donate today. And remember, don't forget to STFU and listen every once in a while. Thanks.
All right. It's time for Aaron and I to STFU, and Emery, the floor is yours.
Did she really do that? Like, did she mean it? That's funny. She's funny. I like her a lot. She's a good person. I've done so much talking already on this pod. I wasn't at work for 2 weeks, so you have to forgive me. Like, I feel pent up. I missed 60 hours of radio, but I'm going to use this time to tell people to never take no for an answer. Like, that's not really an opinion as much as it is just like my personal creed. I've had people I've worked with, people I've trusted, people I've really looked up to, felt like I kind of looked at them as a mentor. Many of them that would just tell me, chill out, be patient. Your time will come. If it doesn't, it's okay. That's wrong. Never listen to that. Go at your own pace. I have made a lot of mistakes. I have burned bridges. I have lost friends. I have created environments in some cases that certainly were toxic around me. I am not a perfect person. One thing that I do feel like I have gotten right is that I've just been incredibly relentless in my pursuit of my personal goals. I try to do it as respectfully as I possibly can. But I've achieved what I've hoped to achieve to this point, and I know there's going to be plenty of other things that I'm hopeful to achieve in my life and my wife's life, and hopefully to help her and anybody I'm associated with. I want to help uplift them and keep them, on their path as well. But the one thing that I could tell people about what I've learned in, the amount of time that I've been an adult and just in life in general is being assertive and aggressive is not the same as being a jerk. It can be perceived as such. You have to sometimes think about yourself, and you have to sometimes think about what you want to do in your life. There's nobody out there that can do those things for you except for you. And until you can go out there and you can chase them, you can grab them, you can hold on to them, you can say that I've actually achieved it. Or in some cases, and I've experienced this too, you go after something and you fail miserably. At the same time, you know that you actually gave it a go. Never not give it a go. Something like that. You're not supposed to use double negatives, which again, good idea. Don't use double negatives. That's my second point. Double negatives are bad. Listen to your English class. Don't worry about, trying to be super cute with words like I just was. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is that you gave it a go. And if you're giving it a go, you're going to be able to write your memoir when you're 80 years old and say, you know what? I wasn't perfect. Not everything I did worked. I wasn't always successful, but man, did I go for it. And I just hope anybody that ever listens to this, and this goes kind of into the old man strength thing, take what you think is yours. Now, don't do that. Like, if you're Vladimir Putin, don't take those words literally. Like, that's not what I mean. I mean, like, if you feel like my goal in life is to achieve X, go get X. As long as X isn't, killing people or stealing stuff that isn't yours. I think it's incredibly important for this younger generation to understand that it's not all about like doing things by a manual or a book. Not everybody's built the same way. I am built very assertive, very aggressive. Have you seen Napoleon, the Joaquin Phoenix movie? I hate to say this because he has looked so poorly on history, but man, I was watching, and I know that's not 100% accurate, but like I was watching the way Joaquin Phoenix was playing Napoleon at certain points, and he's just like, he's taking whatever he wants. And I'm just like, man, I can like relate to that. It's like, this guy lost a lot of battles, and history still looks back and is like, you know what? He wasn't bad as a tactician in the battlefield. It's like, he was pretty bad, but man, that PR firm's doing a lot of heavy work because he was assertive with it. I don't know. It's just something about being aggressive and trying to be relentless in your pursuit of whatever you think that your life goals are. And I'm going to tell every person that's, in college right now, every person that's 13, in 5 years about to go to college as well, instill in your brain that the only person that can achieve your goals is you. And when you're 80 years old and you're getting to write that memoir, I think you'll look back and say, you know what, I actually did do a pretty good job. Even if you weren't successful in what you were looking for, there's a sense of accomplishment with the effort. So don't give up, kids. Be relentless in your pursuits.
Boom. There you go. All right, everybody. We're going to close out this episode of Old Man Strength. Emery, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Be sure to check out the rest of the pods on the Three Beards Media Networks. We've got episodes of Side of the Storm, Hawk's Eye View, and Ball Don't Lie every week. And then alternating, we have False Starts and a few other ones going back and forth. So, Aaron, you got anything to close out?
And maybe another new pod if we can ever get it going.
That's right.
Amy.
Yeah, Amy. So. All righty. Emery, when can they tune into you here locally in Des Moines and in Omaha? Yeah,
good question. So 9 to 11 a.m., I'm on 1040 WHO in the Des Moines area. I'm on in 600 WMT in the Cedar Rapids area, simulcasted. You can hear me anywhere in the entire United States on the free iHeartRadio app, 9 to 11 a.m. I start my Omaha show on 1110 KFAB. You can hear that in a lot of Western Iowa as well. That is 2 to 6 p.m. And then that also is going to be available on the free iHeartRadio app. You can search my name as well, Emery Songer. You can also search Emery on Iowa, which is my Iowa show name. And we podcast all of the shows on there as well. So if you miss anything, you can check those out as well.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. It's been a really fun episode. Appreciate everybody that continues to support us. And with that, we are out of here.